Shit. I got greedy. The last 2 million, that's what did it. I should have walked away, but no. I just had to dip into that final account. I knew something was off about it the moment I saw the bill. Damn it. Now they're closing in. They think I don't know that yet, but I do. And that gives me a little edge, just enough time to vanish completely. Lucky for me, I always had a plan for when things went sideways like this. So, who am I? And who the hell is chasing me? Well, who I am right now doesn't really matter, because in exactly 2 hours, this version of me is going to disappear forever. The trail my hunters are following is about to run cold, dead-end cold. They'll never get enough data to figure out who I really am, or who I'm about to become. See, what I am is a hacker. A damn good one. No, scratch that I'm exceptional. And pissed off, with a very particular hit list. My targets? Drug cartels? I spend my nights tracking their financials, mapping out their dirty accounts, and anonymously sending mountains of incriminating evidence to the right authorities. I've helped convict 4 crooked politicians, at least 50 dirty cops, a dozen soldiers scattered across multiple countries, and more low-level thugs than I can remember. Oh, and I've drained over $100 million from their accounts. Sure, I take a cut, maybe 20%. The rest? It goes to charities, mostly ones dealing with addiction and rehab. Why? Because of my little sister. She fell for the wrong guy. I knew he was bad news, but she wouldn't listen. I tried. God, I tried everything, but she made her choice. After our parents died, I did my best to look after her, but it wasn't enough. She vanished. 2 weeks later, I had to ID what was left of her in a morgue drawer. That broke me. I shut myself off from the world and spent the next 2 years alone, underground literally in my parents' basement, doing nothing but burying myself in code. I didn't sleep much, didn't eat much. Just learned, studied, broke things. I pushed my skills to a level that bordered on myth. In that same period, a certain gang of strung-out freaks junkies who tortured and murdered my sister got a little sloppy. Some very compromising files on them accidentally landed on the desks of the DEA. Turns out, the gang was trying to cut a deal by ratting out others. Rival gangs don't like rats. They reacted faster than the law ever could. The government didn't need trials or appeals, they just saved themselves millions in lawsuits. So yeah, those hunters on my tail, they work for one of the cartels I hit hardest. I bled them of about $30 million. I should have quit at 28, but I found one last hidden pocket. Something about it felt off my gut told me to leave it alone. But I was young, angry, and stupid. The moment that final transfer cleared, passing through over 40 accounts in 6 different countries, alarms started screaming. My own systems went into lockdown. Someone had baked a backtracking algorithm into that account, a very sophisticated one. Now they're tracing it back, digging through 100 IPs, trying to find the origin of the breach. Tough luck. I jammed a flash drive into the port, tapped in a series of keystrokes, and executed a data wipe across my access path. Click, click, done. My digital trail vanished, severed clean. Nothing left to trace. The abandoned building I had been using. I'd been living in burned down in what the authorities called an accident caused by a homeless encampment fire gone out of control. Perfect cover. No one suspected the fire was intentional or that the hard drives, flash memory, and every shred of my personal documents had been tossed into a separate fire pit out in the desert, reduced to ash, long before anyone could piece anything together. Satisfied that my trail had gone up in literal smoke, I loaded up my van and drove west. 4 days later, I rolled into Las Vegas. That was 5 years ago. "Babe, my laptop's acting weird again," I called out. "Incredible," came the reply from my stunning wife, Monica. "How is it even possible for a 25-year-old man to be this hopeless with computers? Seriously, what would you do without me?" She leaned over, pressed a quick kiss to the top of my head, and danced her fingers over the keyboard. A couple of clicks and taps later, I was back checking my email like the clueless truck driver she thought I was. "Dinner will be ready in about 30 minutes, she added over her shoulder. Thanks, sweetheart, I said, watching her head back into the kitchen. She was humming content, effortless, natural. My Monica. It had been 2 years since we got married, and not a day went by that I didn't remind myself how lucky I was. I'd walked away from my past life and built a new one from the ashes. I worked as a truck driver for a local lumber mill. It was union, so the pay was solid. Using only a few thousand carefully withdrawn from one of my offshore accounts, I bought us a modest 3-bedroom home on an acre of land. Quiet, cozy, away from prying eyes. I also built a separate building out back, a workshop/storage facility, or so I said. Monica never went inside. She thought it was for my muscle car hobby, and in part, it was. But I'd also built something else beneath the shop, a hidden chamber accessed by lifting part of the raised concrete floor in a side room. That was where I rebuilt my digital empire. Carefully, quietly. I wasn't actively going after cartels or laundering evidence anymore. I told myself I'd done enough. Besides, I had plenty of money stashed if I ever needed it. It was smarter to lie low, let the heat fade. But I couldn't stop entirely. I needed to stay sharp. Technology evolves, and I wasn't about to let myself become a dinosaur. So, the workshop became a cover. I spent time there tinkering with old cars, rebuilding engines, getting my hands dirty. Monica had zero interest in any of it. She never set foot inside. That gave me the time and privacy to slip online and stretch my hacking muscles without raising suspicion. Why hide it from her? Simple. She only ever knew me as a sweet, slightly clumsy mechanic who barely understood how email worked. I couldn't exactly tell her, "Hey, by the way, I used to be an internationally wanted hacker nicknamed Spectre in the cyber underground." For one, the feds still wanted me for cyber crimes. Not to mention, they'd love to keep me in a sealed room using my talents for their own ends. And then, of course, there were the cartels still pissed, still looking. If they ever found out I was alive, my death would be slow, creative, and unforgettable. So no, telling Monica the truth was never an option. And after we got married, I took extra precautions more for her safety than mine. If she didn't know anything, she couldn't be used against me. No leverage, no risk. It was better this way. Let me tell you about Monica. To me, she's the most beautiful woman on this planet. I always chuckle at those stories where every guy says, "My wife is the most beautiful woman in the world." Like, how's that even mathematically possible? But hey, beauty's subjective, right? Truth is, Monica might not turn every head when she walks into a room. To most people, she's probably just a very attractive woman. But to me, she's a goddess, no contest. She stands about 5'6", with these long, wavy, copper bronze curls that tumble halfway down her back. Her eyes deep, striking emerald green can hold you captive with a single glance. She's got that curvy silhouette that just doesn't quit. 34D bust, tight waist, flat stomach, and hips that flare out like they were sculpted by an artist who had a serious thing for hourglasses. Long, toned, sun-kissed legs, high cheekbones, dimples that flash when she smiles, full lips you can't help but want to kiss, and a chin with just enough definition to be sexy, not harsh. Yeah, she's something else. So, how'd I meet this radiant woman? It was just another regular afternoon at the sawmill when Monica walked in. She needed a couple of boards for shelving in her new apartment. We started chatting while picking out the right pieces, and somewhere between debating maple versus pine, she mentioned she wasn't really good with tools. Naturally, I offered to swing by after work and help install the shelves. My only payment? She'd supply the beer and let me cook us dinner. That night turned into dinner. Then dinner turned into dancing. And no, before you ask, there was no steamy sex scene. Sorry to disappoint. The night ended with a shy little kiss on the cheek. That's it. Truth was, I was terrified of women. Still am, a little. Let me back up a bit. When I ripped off the cartel, I was a rail-thin, socially awkward 19-year-old hacker 6'1", barely 110 pounds, all bones and code. My sex life back then? Basically non-existent. A tragic, empty desert of ones and zeros. When I got to Vegas, I dipped my toes into the adult world in the most clinical way imaginable. 3 experiences, all paid for. The first? Some woman I picked up off Fremont Street. Robotic, cold, like sleeping with an answering machine. The second was at a brothel out in Pahrump. Better, I guess she at least faked like she gave a damn. The third time, same town, different brothel. This time, I paid for the whole night. Not for sex, really, but for education. I asked her to teach me, and to her credit, she did. She taught me how to be generous, how to listen, how to take my time. So, when I finally started dating Monica, I had just enough confidence not to completely self-destruct. It wasn't until our 5th date that we finally slept together. I took her to dinner at the Stratosphere. Then we hit a wild dance club on the Strip. Between the wine at dinner and the drinks at the club, we were buzzing and sweaty by the time we got back to my place. I always thought she was stunning, but when she took off her clothes, goddamn. That first night, I didn't even have to ask if she was into it. The soaked sheets spoke louder than words. As long as she was happy, I was happy. Apparently, that final brothel visit paid off more than I realized. I'd also spent the past year lifting, running, working out like a man possessed. All that effort stacked on top of the physical labor from my job meant I'd transformed into something new. 6'1", 220 pounds of solid functional muscle. Still a nerd at heart, of course. One more thing worth mentioning back then. I had no real clue if I was, let's say, well-equipped. I figured I was average. The prostitutes all complimented me. But come on, that's part of the job, right? I never took it seriously. But with Monica, the way she reacted, no script, no act, that was the first time I realized maybe I wasn't quite so average after all. Monica and I dated for about 6 months before I popped the question. She said yes. 6 months after that, we got married. We were happy, really happy. She worked as an accountant at a big national firm with offices in Vegas. Made decent money. Between her income and mine, we lived pretty damn comfortably. I never had to dip into my secret stash. Our combined incomes were more than enough to enjoy a pretty sweet lifestyle. We hit up all the best restaurants, saw the hottest shows in town, and even bought a pontoon boat to cruise the lake on weekends. We each had a nice ride in the driveways, a sleek Audi, mine a beast of a truck. And the sex? Solid. On average, 4 times a week. Sometimes more. No kids meant no tiptoeing around or locking doors. We got creative. Kitchen, living room, backyard, pool, hot tub, you name it. We were passionate, adventurous, and absolutely into each other. After work, I usually slipped out to my shop for a couple of hours. Half that time, I was elbow deep in one of my muscle car projects. The other half? Downstairs, in my secret bunker, keeping my skills sharp. I wasn't doing anything wrong per se, just poking around, testing firewalls, exploring back doors, surfing places I shouldn't technically be in. I never stole anything, never altered systems. I just kept the blade sharp. If I wanted to, I could have pulled off massive data breaches, skimmed millions. But I didn't want to leave a trail. Staying invisible was everything. After dinner, Monica and I would curl up on the couch and watch something, Netflix, HBO, whatever. Sometimes we just ended up in bed early, wrapped around each other for hours before finally dozing off. And through it all, I kept playing the part of the tech-illiterate husband. It was almost funny. I'd struggle to send an email, fumble with the television remote, let her handle any digital problem. No one, not her coworkers, not even our friends would ever think the man who couldn't sync his Bluetooth was one of the most wanted hackers on the planet. Still, behind the scenes, I was working, quietly. I reassembled my botnet, programmed fresh proxy layers, and launched test intrusions on large corporate systems and government networks. I ran all my activity through foreign servers, at least 3 or 4 at once, to mask my signal. No digital fingerprint, no traceable origin. Then, about 6 months ago, I started noticing something. Monica was different. It wasn't major. At first, She just seemed a little more tense, a little more distant. Our sex life slipped from 4 times a week to 2. Some weeks, only once. She started coming home later, looking drained. Half the time, she'd head straight for the shower, eat dinner without much conversation, then disappear into bed early. When I asked, she said her team at work was under pressure. A huge new account, tight deadlines, a make-or-break deal. Sounded legit. She'd even call me from the office some Fridays, letting me know she was going out for happy hour with her coworkers. She'd done that before. It didn't raise any flags. But after 6 months of this, I started to wonder. I asked her how long this project was supposed to last. I mean, surely they either closed the deal or moved on by now? She told me, another week or 2, max. Things are almost wrapped up. She sounded convincing. Still, I figured she could use a little pampering, a pick-me-up, so I surprised her with a full-day spa package for Saturday massage, facial, mani-pedi, the whole 9 yards. I gave it to her on Wednesday night. She lit up like a Christmas tree, wrapped her arms around me, and thanked me about 10 times before dragging me to bed. That night, incredible. Like she was making up for lost time. Saturday rolled around, and she left at 9 a.m. sharp, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek before breezing out the door. She wouldn't be back until around 4 o'clock. I poured myself a strong cup of coffee and headed to the shop to finish tuning up the engine I'd been working on. About an hour in, I decided to take a break and stepped into the computer room. Up to that point, I'd made a hard rule. Never touch Monica's company. Ever. It was like the cardinal rule of hacking don't shit where you eat. I never touched the firm I worked for, and I never so much as peeked at hers. But that morning, I broke the rule. I logged into my secure rig and ran diagnostics on my security layers. Something in me just wouldn't let go of that nagging curiosity. I couldn't shake the curiosity. This large account, Monica, had been so wrapped up in, what was it really? Something just didn't sit right. So I let myself break the rule a little further and decided to peek into her company's servers. Their security? Laughable. I was inside within minutes. First stop, Monica's work computer. If she was involved in the project, her files might give me some clues. I figured I'd find proposals, financial breakdowns, maybe client portfolios. Instead, nothing. At least nothing related to the supposed big client that had her working late for half a year. I ran searches phrases like, new account, client offer, quote proposal, nada. That's when I started digging deeper. Buried inside her folders, I found a locked directory titled Photos for Ethan. Ethan. Of course, I knew who he was. I'd met Ethan at several of her corporate events. Their IT director, smarmy, overconfident, and overly charming in that fake, used car salesman way. I never liked him. I always figured he had a thing for her. But this? I cracked the folder open in seconds. What I saw made my stomach twist into a fist. There were dozens, literally dozens of nude photos of Monica. In her office, in hotel rooms, on a desk, on the damn conference table. Her legs spread, her face flushed, captured from every angle. There were videos to her having sex with another man in multiple positions. And the worst part? There were shots of her doing things she'd always told me she wasn't into. Games, acts, poses she'd flat out rejected whenever I'd suggested them. Yet here she was, in vivid detail, offering herself up like a damn gift basket. I stared at the screen, blank, hollow, numb. A part of me died right there. I don't know how long I sat motionless, just absorbing it, letting the betrayal seep in. Then instinct kicked in. I needed more. I needed answers. Divorcing this woman? That was a done deal. But if I was going to cut her out, I needed the full picture. I had hours before she got back, so I kept digging. I combed through her emails and got hit with another punch to the gut. Turns out this wasn't some fling that started 6 months ago when she began acting distant. Number. Monica and Ethan had been sleeping together for over a year before she even met me. which begged the question, why the hell did she ever start dating me? I kept reading, trying to piece it all together, and that's when things got darker. One email mentioned accounting discrepancies involving several of her firm's biggest clients. And then, another bombshell, an offshore account. I switched over to Ethan's machine. More photos, some of the same, some new. Several taken in a cheap motel room, others in what looked like a bedroom that wasn't mine. I needed more time, so I copied the contents of both Monica's and Ethan's computers, along with all their company network folders, onto a spare drive connected to my personal server. Out of habit, I checked the personnel files on the network before logging off and then froze when I saw something unexpected. My name. I stared at it. A folder. Why did her company have a file on me? I didn't open it yet. Not then. Instead, I slipped in some custom spyware silent, invisible, self-updating. It would relay everything Monica and Ethan did straight back to me, in real time. Every file opened, every message sent, every move tracked. At that point, any work I had on the cars was completely forgotten. The game had changed. Monica came home later that afternoon, glowing from her spa day. She wrapped her arms around me and whispered thanks into my ear. That night, she pulled out all the stops in bed wild, passionate, full of energy like I hadn't seen in months. And yeah, I hated her for every lie, every kiss laced with deceit, every moan meant for someone else. But I'm a man. And when a beautiful woman like Monica throws herself at you like that, even if she's the devil incarnate, you don't say no. And yeah, at that point, that's exactly what she was to me. The devil in heels. Sunday came, and I went back to the shop that Sunday morning. Monica was still asleep when I got up perfect. I grabbed her phone, installed spyware in under 5 minutes. Standard stuff. Texts mirrored to my private system, all calls recorded and stored on a separate encrypted drive. I'd even be able to monitor her online activity in real time. She left around 10 a.m., claiming she was meeting a friend for some shopping. Her Find My Friends app had been disabled, which was a huge red flag on its own, but no problem. I'd already hacked her car's onboard GPS. She actually did go to the mall, surprisingly enough. I guess liars need the occasional truth to stay believable. Once I was sure she wouldn't be back for a while, I made my move. I grabbed her laptop and mirrored the entire drive onto one of my own. Then I dropped a keylogger onto the system, configured the webcam for remote access, and wiped my fingerprints off the casing. I didn't have much time before she came back, so I did a quick sweep through her browser history. That's when I hit another payload. Turns out she was using a second email address completely unknown to me. Even more interesting, she'd been accessing a Cayman Islands bank site. A lot. I didn't have time to deep dive just yet, but I flagged it for later. I wiped some grease across my hands and dabbed a smudge on my cheek. By the time I heard Monica pull into the driveway, I looked convincingly like a man who'd spent his Sunday fixing an engine. Shower, dinner, movie, bed, same routine. That week, I kept up the charade playing the loving, clueless husband who spent his evenings tinkering with cars while his wife unwound after work. But what I was really doing was digging through a digital mountain of damning information. Tuesday night, I hit gold. I found a chat Logan exchange between Monica and Ethan. He was reminding her to delete the browser history from my laptop. Wait, what? Why was she using my machine? Then it hit me. Of course, I'd set my laptop up to tunnel into secure servers the moment it went online. A direct, clean route for anyone who knew what they were doing. It would be perfect for illegal financial transfers. And I, like a fool, never even considered the idea that I needed to spy on my own gear. The next evening, I was monitoring their systems as usual when something new popped up, another data stream from my laptop. I froze, minimized everything else, watched the real-time flow. Money, transfers. I was staring at active transactions. I switched to the laptop's camera feed, tossing the image onto another monitor. There she was, Monica, sitting at my desk, typing away like it was hers. She had a Bluetooth earpiece in. I cranked up the mic and patched the feed into a third screen. Ethan's voice. He was walking her through the transaction. She was moving approximately $50,000 from a shell account at their company into a bank account in the Cayman Islands, using my machine, my IP address. She finished the transfer, deleted the browser history, logged off. That's when it all started to crystallize. Everything, the distance, the stress, the big client. It was all cover. They weren't just sleeping together. They were laundering money. And they were using me as the fall guy. I still hadn't gone through the HR file with my name on it, but the picture was forming fast. Later that night, I opened that personnel folder. Inside, I found the final piece. Apparently, I'd been hired by Monica's company as a computer security consultant. Ethan had made the call, naturally, since he was the head of IT. There were even records of payments made to me for my services, all of them wired to a bank account in the Caymans. My name, my machine, my IP, my downfall. And all of it set up before I even met Monica. They picked me from the beginning. The plan was brilliant, actually. Use a nobody, someone with no real paper trail, no digital presence, someone too dumb to understand what was happening, but just smart enough to seem useful. Someone disposable. And I was that someone. Only problem? I wasn't the idiot they thought I was. I began to see it clearly now. I was being played, dragged into something deep, calculated, and ugly. It wasn't just betrayal. It was entrapment. And I wasn't just some accidental casualty. I was the target. It was time to shift gears. Now that I understood what they were doing, I needed to see how deep the rabbit hole went and figure out how the hell to claw my way back out. And let me tell you, it was bad. I checked the account in the Cayman Islands again. Almost $10 million sat there, looking perfectly clean on the surface. But the timestamps told a different story. The earliest major transactions all began about 6 months after Monica and I got married. That wasn't a coincidence. It was timing, deliberate. They had waited just long enough for everything to look like I'd had full access to the systems and just short enough to implicate me without suspicion. They'd even tried sloppily, I might add, to cover their tracks by muddying the log of which computer actually executed the transfers. But I saw through that in minutes. I dug deeper into the personnel file they had on me, my official records. That's when I found more red flags than a Soviet parade. Fabricated credentials, falsified access logs, HR memos and internal emails indicating I was on the IT payroll. When this whole thing blew up, I'd be ground zero. So, what now? Strangely, it wasn't all that hard to pretend like everything was normal. Monica had no idea that I knew. She still kissed me, still smiled at me over dinner, still whispered sweet nothings into my ear before curling up in bed beside me. And yes, I kept sleeping with her, not out of love, not even lust, really. It was control. It was power. It was mine. The truth is, she was still gorgeous, and when she threw herself at me, I took full advantage. In some twisted way, having sex with her while knowing what I knew made me feel like I was finally the one in charge. The following Saturday, I combed through every email she'd ever sent me from day one. What I found confirmed what I was already starting to suspect. They'd picked me before we ever went on our first date. I wasn't a coincidence. I was a setup. Apparently, she thought I was attractive, charming enough to seduce, and best of all, completely clueless with technology. Her concern, according to an email she sent Ethan, was that I might be too dumb to pull off the technical framing they needed. But Ethan had assured her that was perfect. The less I knew, the less likely I'd ever figure anything out. And so, they picked me as their perfect scapegoat. Well, that was going to backfire. I needed a planone that would take them both down and leave no trace pointing back to me. So I got to work. First, I opened 2 new offshore accounts. Then I reactivated my old botnet me personal army of zombie machines. Most of the bots were just smoke, and mirrors decoys to flood the networks with static. But a select group? Trackable. Barely. And only by a hacker at my level. I wanted someone to follow them eventually, but not too easily. Let the trail tease them, just enough to believe they had something. Next, I scrubbed my name from the company's personnel files. Completely. Deleted, overwritten, and replaced with unrelated garbage data. Gone. Then I hacked into the logs and altered every trace of file transfers from my laptop, pre-routing the digital fingerprints to bounce off a completely unrelated IP address. If anyone followed the trail, they'd hit a dead end in a coffee shop in Prague. To seal the deal, I ran a vicious, self-replicating virus on my laptop. It tore through the system like wildfire, then severed all connections to my private servers before frying the core. Dead tech. Later that night, when I sat down to check my email, the laptop was toast. Totally unusable. Just a black screen and a whirring fan. Monica came over, peering down at it. What happened? I shrugged. No idea. Might have clicked a bad link. Her concern seemed real. She looked almost worried. But I could tell it wasn't for me. It was for the tool they'd been using, the access point they were planning to frame me with. The next morning, I intercepted a message between Monica and Ethan. The plan was nearly complete. They only needed 2 more transfers, another $10 million, and then they'd spring the trap. The timing was flawless. Monica, being the one who discovered the fraud, would take point on the internal investigation. Ethan, as IT director, would lead the digital forensics. Together, they'd uncover that I was the one behind the theft. Everything was pointing straight at me. The story was airtight. I had the motive, money, the access via my laptop, and the digital fingerprints to back it all up. The next step? Monica would file for divorce while I was in jail. A year or so later, she and Ethan would get married. Her reputation would survive. Suspicion would exist. Sure, but she'd frame herself as the wounded party who'd been used by a man who hid his skills from her. Because clearly, she had no idea her sweet, dumb husband knew anything about computers. I specifically targeted her and used her to access the company's internal systems. That was the story they were building. That I seduced Monica, wormed my way into her life, and then used her as my personal backdoor into the company's network. They laughed about it in their emails, like it was a joke. They joked about how clueless I'd be when the police started grilling me on where the missing millions had gone. How I'd just sit there blinking, totally unaware that I'd even committed a crime. Monica even mentioned she'd buy me a brand new laptop so they could finish the last 2 transfers. The plan was to complete the setup and dump the last $10 million over the next 3 weeks. Which meant I had exactly 3 weeks before they dropped the guillotine. I decided they wouldn't get that far. On Monday, I walked into work and told my boss I needed some time off to handle personal stuff. No questions asked. I had plenty of unused vacation days. That gave me all the space I needed to burn their world to the ground. The first thing I did was search the internet for the nastiest, most ruthless, bloodthirsty divorce attorney in the entire city. A real shark. Someone who'd see a woman like Monica and smell blood in the water. I booked an appointment for the next day. They thought they had 3 weeks. They were lucky if they had 2. When I got back home, I booted up my system and got to work. Logged into Ethan's home computer remotely. You'd think the head of an IT department would know to turn the damn thing off. Nope. All he did was put the monitor to sleep. Amateur hour. I routed the connection through a private server in Belarus, not that it really mattered. The trace would be wiped clean before it could lead anywhere meaningful. His computer would be the dead end in a maze of digital ghosts. The cartel I tangled with 5 years earlier had taught me a few lessons in paranoia. Those guys updated their security protocols religiously, changed passwords often. But the one thing they couldn't seem to stop doing? Saving everything on local drives. And local drives? Well, they're easy prey for the kind of malware that hides inside those fake, exclusive luxury watch ads that every rich idiot clicks. This was just prep. James Ethan was still a tool I needed. His time would come. But for now, I needed him alive, online, and totally unaware that I was setting him up for his own personal apocalypse. That evening, while I was in the shop pretending to tinker with my charger, Monica ran out to Walmart to buy me that shiny new laptop. When she got back, she texted me that it would take her about an hour to set it up. "Perfect, thanks, babe," I replied with a little heart emoji. I waited until she got comfortable, then started executing the real play. First step, cut ties with Ethan. I had to isolate her. I didn't want Monica hurt, at least not physically. I just wanted her behind bars for the next 20 years, where she belonged. Ethan? Different story. He was going to suffer. He just didn't know it yet. Using a private server, I tunneled into Monica's new laptop. From there, I accessed her work machine and then into the company's internal servers. I made 4 separate transfers, totaling $20 million, from the company's master account into new offshore accounts all in Monica's name. Then I booked a one-way flight for her. Destination? Cayman Islands. Departure, Thursday morning. Before logging off her system, I scrubbed everything. Deleted Ethan from her contacts, erased their message history, their call logs, and even removed him from her email threads. I deleted all browsing history and wiped the cache. Then, one by one, I deleted all the spyware I had on her devices. It was risky, but necessary. I couldn't have any digital footprints pointing back to me. Not now. Finally, I severed the last remaining connection between her laptop and my private server. Then I pulled the trigger. From my shop, I remotely disabled the home Wi-Fi router. Of course, Monica had no idea I had a second, much more advanced router installed in the garage. The moment the internet went down, I got a ping from the spyware I'd planted on her phone earlier. She had just finished setting up the new laptop for me and was literally about to use it for another money transfer when the connection dropped. Panic. Frustration. Confusion. I laughed out loud. They were scrambling now, trying to figure out why the connection had died. Ethan started messaging her in a frenzy. Monica paced the room, trying to reset the router. The plan was unraveling faster than they could react. And I was just getting started. I rerouted every dollar they had already. Stolen funds sitting quietly in Ethan's hidden accounts and funneled it all into new ones I had set up, this time entirely under Monica's name. Once the original account was drained to zero, I closed it for good. No trace, no way back. The final step that night was pulling the spyware from her phone. I didn't know who might eventually be combing through her devices, and I didn't want any chance of them tracing it back to me. Cleaner was always safer. Then I shut down all my systems and went to eat. Tomorrow, I knew, was going to be a hell of a day. When I got home, Monica greeted me with a carefully crafted smile. "Your new laptop's ready," she said, trying not to sound too eager. "But the internet's still down, so you won't be able to log in yet." I gave her a tired nod and a little smile. Ah well, no rush. She had no clue how little that mattered to me. That night, we watched a movie. Or rather, I watched her while she watched her phone. She was jittery, thumbing through her messages like someone waiting for a call that wasn't coming. I could practically see her frustration simmering just beneath the surface. I suspected she had tried logging into the offshore account and found nothing, just zeros. Good. She was also texting someone, Ethan, no doubt trying to figure out what the hell had happened. I didn't interfere. I just watched, quiet, amused. No sex that night. She was too distracted, too anxious. I didn't mind. The next morning, I got up before Monica did and left the house. I had a meeting with my lawyer later, but until then, I just wandered around, killing time with coffee and small talk with strangers. Calm before the storm. Because by mid-morning, I'd know everything. Eventually, I was ushered into my lawyer's office, and let me tell you, it was straight out of a legal drama. She was stunning. 5'6", with features so sharp you'd think she was carved out of marble. Her suit was professional. Yes, but fitted just right to suggest she could kill with her heels as easily as her cross-examination. Legs for miles. A chest that looked like it started bar fights. A smile that could slice through steel. 2 minutes into the meeting and I knew she was a killer in the courtroom. I could almost hear a gospel choir singing behind her as she walked in. Once we confirmed privacy, I laid out the situation. My wife had been cheating on me throughout our entire marriage. Worsish and her lover had been laundering money and using me as the fall guy. She raised her perfectly arched eyebrows. And how do you know all this? I gave her a version of the truth. Kind of. Okay, I lied. A lot. I told her I was using Monica's laptop because mine was acting up. That's when I stumbled across a folder full of pornographic photos. Then emails. Dozens of them. Dirty, explicit, and damning. They spelled out not just an affair, but a full-blown fraud operation in progress. I just want out, I said, playing the role of the betrayed husband. Before all this explodes. She nodded, said she'd begin the paperwork immediately. She could probably serve Monica by the end of the week. I told her to wait, because I had a better idea, one that required patience and perfect timing. We wrapped the meeting, and I headed home, fired up my private system, rebooted my Wi-Fi, and jumped back into the shadows. Meanwhile, my spyware continued to run undetected on Monica's work system. And by morning, the explosion hit. Hard. At 8:02 a.m., Monica's company held an emergency boardroom meeting. The missing $20 million had finally been discovered. Chaos broke out immediately. An internal investigation was launched. And by then, I'd managed to crack into Ethan's phone earlier that morning. He wasn't careful. Never was. The moment the $20 million theft came to light, he followed the digital trail and discovered that it led straight back to Monica. His panic practically radiated through the screen. He realized, too late, that the original account was now empty and the funds had been moved into several new ones he didn't have access to. Accounts that, on paper, belonged entirely to Monica. The fallout was instant. Accusations exploded. People demanded answers, but none could be given. The cover story crumbled within hours. Monica's name was everywhere. Her fingerprints were on everything. And then came the moment I'd been waiting for. She got the email. It was short, cold, and final. You are requested to appear in the executive conference room at 3 p.m. with the CEO, CFO, and Director of Security. Oof, that's a table you don't walk away from clean. I sat back in my chair and smiled, but just as I was about to pour myself a drink, I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Several sets of them. I glanced out the window. Police cruisers, and a line of black Chevy Suburbans. Men in windbreakers with bold white letters. FBI. Well, damn. Showtime. I calmly shut everything down, locked the entrance to my basement lair, secured the fake concrete panel that hid the stairs. Then I walked into the main garage, grabbed a wrench, and smeared some engine lube on my shirt and hands. I popped the hood on a half-assembled '69 Charger and leaned over just as the first agent knocked. When I stepped outside, the sun caught the metallic glint of badges and sidearms. Sir, we have a warrant to search the premises. Sure, I said, keeping my voice perfectly neutral. Whatever you need. I barely glanced at the paperwork. I knew this was coming. Hell, I planned for it. This is my wife's laptop, I said, handing it over. That one's mine, but I haven't even used it yet. She just set it up yesterday, and the Wi-Fi was down, so... I let that sentence hang in the air like fog. I made sure to play dumb. Kept up the image of the lovable idiot husband. Honestly, I'm not good with computers, I added with an awkward chuckle. Just ask Monica, or anyone who knows us. They bought it. Still, protocol was protocol. They took me in for questioning. The hours that followed were harsh, aggressive interrogation, probing questions, rapid-fire accusations. But my story, rock solid. I was a truck driver, a grease monkey, the guy who needed help opening attachments on emails. I had no idea what my wife did at her job. She was an accountant. She worked with clients, but I didn't know who or what they were. They asked about a one-way ticket. What ticket? I said, frowning. She's going somewhere? Without me? That seemed to throw them. I could see it in their eyes. Eventually, they accepted what became clear. I had no clue what was going on. No motive, no technical knowledge, just a husband caught in the fallout. They searched my shop thoroughly, but the hidden stairwell never even caught their attention. The panel blended seamlessly. They never saw the truth sitting just feet beneath their boots. By the end of the day, they released me. Monica wasn't so lucky. She was arrested while I was still being grilled. And Ethan, he was forced to testify. I imagine that stung hard. Not just because he had to admit to his affair with a coworker, but because Monica had turned on him. She'd shut him out of the accounts, moved the money, booked a one-way flight without telling him, left him with nothing. Betrayal stings worse when it comes from someone you think you're winning with. Of course, I knew this would happen. I planned on being interrogated. I was her husband. After all, naturally, I'd be under suspicion. When they let me make my one call, I called her a lawyer. Naturally. I even made sure to find the best in town. But of course, I didn't. I found one of those slightly above mediocre types. The kind who knows the system well enough to look legitimate but doesn't have the teeth to fight. I wanted Monica convicted. And I wanted her to serve every single day. This was federal, after all. No parole, no early release, no slap on the wrist. If she got 20 years, she'd serve 20 years. To the second, I showed up at Monica's bail hearing, played the part of the supportive husband to perfection, even used our house as collateral to bail her out. The judge considered her a flight risk, so she was fitted with an ankle monitor before being released. It was easy to wear the mask. I hated her god. Did I hate Herbert from the outside? I was still her doting spouse, loyal and hopeful. People love a man who stands by his wife through hard times. What a joke. She was too numb and rattled to try seducing me, which worked in my favor. I wouldn't have touched her if she'd begged. The betrayal still burned too hot. Her original phone had been confiscated as evidence, so I did the thoughtful thing. I went out and bought her a new one. Naturally, I brought it back to my shop before handing it over. Installed spyware like a pro. Calls, messages, browsing. GP-SIT was all mine. She never even questioned it. She tried texting Ethanone desperate, panicked message. His response was ice cold. He couldn't have contact with her anymore. He was going to be called as a witness. He blocked her number right after. I'm sure that stung. But Monica, in all her arrogance, thought she could beat the system. She refused a plea deal and insisted on going to trial. Claimed she was being framed. Lied through her teeth with a straight face. She truly believed she could talk her way out of it. In her mind, it all made sense. She wasn't guilty of all the money, just half. She hadn't used that specific account, hadn't transferred funds from her laptop, hadn't bought a plane ticket, at least not for that purpose. She didn't fire her lover he left on his own. But the law doesn't care about degrees of guilt. The stolen funds were recovered quickly. I made sure of that. Not because I cared about the company, but because it helped the case slam shut faster. Watching the trial was fun. No, really? From my seat in the back, I watched Ethan take the stand and squirm his way through his testimony. All those files, transactions, logins, it was all laid bare. His face gave everything away. The internal war between loyalty, bitterness, and fear played out right there in the courtroom. And Monica? She watched her so-called soulmate throw her under the bus, again and again. Every time he said, her laptop or her login credentials, I saw something die behind her eyes. For 3 days, he spilled everything, and I sat quietly, hands folded, doing my best to hide the joy bubbling in my chest. I didn't need to celebrate aloud. Her face said everything. The disbelief, the heartbreak, the hatred slowly replacing the love she once had for him. She took the stand, tried to spin a story of manipulation and victimhood. But the evidence was a tidal wave. It crushed her narrative flat. She was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. No parole, no deals, no early release. She's going to spend the next 2 decades locked up. And I wasn't done. It was time to deal with Ethan. My plan for him? Evil, untraceable, poetic. He would never know why it happened or that it came from me. That part was important. I couldn't afford to leave any clue. No revenge note, no last-second reveal. Just silence and suffering. I had my lawyer update the divorce papers to reflect Monica's conviction and imprisonment. Within days, she was served chained to a courtroom table, orange jumpsuit and all. Meanwhile, I opened new bank accounts in Geneva and the Caymans. This time, they were linked to Ethan, carefully. Through the dark web, I left traces breadcrumbs that would all point to his IP address. Nothing obvious, but enough for the right people to follow if they knew what they were looking for. The whispers started fast. Hacker forums lit up. After 5 years of silence, Spectre was back. But this time, I didn't want just reputation, I wanted action, precision, chaos. So, I launched the first attack. 10 servers across 6 countries, carefully chained, masked, layered. Then boom. I unleashed my botnet on a financial institution. Broke in, dug around, found the 2 accounts I needed. Transferred the funds millions directly into Ethan's freshly linked accounts. Then I shut it all down. Killed the connection, wiped every log, burned every trace. And then, I sat back and logged into the dark web. Time to watch the wolves sniff out fresh blood. I didn't expect anything big right away. It was too soon, but better to stay alert. Still, the next morning, I logged in and saw chaos. There'd been another bank hit overnight. 4 more accounts drained. That brought the total in the account I'd set up under Ethan's name to a nice, round $20 million. The community noticed. Hacker forums lit up like wildfire. Messages flew. Speculation erupted. People were trying to track me. Again. Of course, they wouldn't find me. They never do. But they would find someone. They'd find the goat, the scapegoat, the poor bastard they thought was me. A few old names popped up in the chat threads. Familiar handles. It looked like the same group that had been hunting me down 5 years ago. Relentless, paranoid, dangerous, perfect. It was time to close the loop. I went back into the bank system, not through Ethan's machine, but directly this time. Bypassed his IP entirely, accessed the funds, and transferred the full $20 million out of his account and into a separate one I'd opened in Switzerland under a new alias. Then I meticulously scrubbed the transaction clean. No logs, no fingerprints, no trace. And I wasn't done. I logged back into Ethan's computer one last time and launched another hit. This one was small, just $2 million. But the amount didn't matter. What mattered was the embedded tracker in the target account. A digital beacon. Last time, I'd seen it coming. I knew how it worked and escaped just in time. But this time, this was for someone who didn't have a clue what was happening. Someone like Ethan. I sat back and imagined the scene. Ethan sweating in a basement somewhere, tied to a chair, confused and terrified as masked men screamed at him about money he'd never seen. They'd ask where it was, where it went, who helped him. And he'd have no answers, because he didn't even know he'd been set up. It was beautiful. After that final launch, I severed all ties with Ethan's system, scrubbed every last fragment, disconnected completely. A week passed. I cleared out my hidden computer room and converted it into a normal-looking storage space. Dusty shelves, old tools, nothing suspicious. I was finishing up the paperwork on a new place I'd quietly bought in Montana. It was under a shell corp, of course my name nowhere on it. A clean start, just in case I needed to vanish again. Then, one morning, the news broke. Ethan was missing. He hadn't shown up for work in days. His phone went dark. Police found his car abandoned in a strip mall parking lot, key still in the ignition. No sign of him. No witnesses. Nothing. I turned the television off, poured myself a glass of whiskey, and started packing. James? That was his real name. Ethan was just the alias. No! He screamed as the cattle prod jolted him again. I swear I don't know what you're talking about. Ghost, the man said coldly, stepping forward. This time, you made a mistake. The cartel's hacker brutal, efficient held up a tablet. The tracking software led us straight to your computer. We recovered the $2 million from the last hack. Now, where's the rest? James was shaking, bleeding, stripped, bound to a pipe in some underground hell, deep in a jungle he couldn't even identify. We want the other $20 million you took a few days ago, the man said, and the $30 million from 5 years ago. James sobbed. You don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. They didn't believe him. Of course they didn't. He'd been snatched just as he was getting into his car outside a Starbucks. A sharp jab in the neck, a blackout, and then this. He woke up, strapped to a seat on a private jet, mouth dry, wrists bound, confusion morphing into terror. They called him Ghost, over and over, demanded he confess, demanded he tell them where the money was. He couldn't answer. When they showed him screenshots of the data from his own computer, he wet himself in fear. The evidence was their logins, transfers, keys. He didn't know what any of it meant. But they did. And now they promised him 2 choices. Tell them what they wanted to know and die quickly. Or keep lying. And suffer. The look in their eyes told him which one they were hoping for. I realized I'd screwed myself the moment I understood I had nothing to give them. No explanations. No locations. No names. No keys. Nothing. And now I was strung up literally naked, hanging by my wrists from the ceiling of a damp, rust-stained bunker, somewhere deep in the Colombian jungle. My feet barely touched the ground. My legs had been spread and shackled, leaving me completely vulnerable. They'd been using a cattle prod, repeatedly, strategically. I'd been here for 3 days. Day 1, fists, boots, blood. Day 2, the whip. Today, the cattle prod, jammed into places you never want a live wire touching. And tomorrow? God, I didn't even want to think about tomorrow. Or the day after that, or the one after that. I was hanging on by a thread. I wasn't just in pain, I was unraveling. And I still had no idea what answers they wanted. I wasn't the guy they thought I was. But they were convinced. Somewhere, across the world, back in a quiet corner of the US, I had just finished what I called moving day. James Ethan, whatever name you prefer, had left about a month ago. Yesterday, his body was discovered dumped on the side of a dirt road near Cartagena, tortured, mutilated, left for the ants. Now it was my turn to disappear. By nightfall, the identity I had lived under would be gone. I had already shipped everything from my house Severy encrypted drive, every fake passport, every scrap of the life I built into a storage unit in Denver, paid for via a shell company and anonymous wire transfers. But before I could truly disappear, I had one more thing to do. One last meeting. Monica was escorted into the visitor room of the detention center. Her hands were cuffed to a steel ring on the table. She looked hollow, no makeup, hair tangled, eyes sunken, rimmed in shadows. That orange jumpsuit washed her out. She looked nothing like the woman who used to manipulate every room she entered. Orange isn't really your color, I said, sitting down across from her. Please, Mark, she begged, her voice raw. You have to help me. I didn't do what they said. You know I didn't. I sighed. Monica, I can't do anything for you, I said, voice low, steady. Besides, we're getting divorced. Her voice cracked. Please, I didn't do this. I don't want a divorce. It's over, I said. Just sign the papers. Tears welled up in her eyes. Talk to James, please. Maybe he can help. We were friends once, weren't we? Maybe he'll listen to you. I stared at her. You haven't heard? I asked quietly. She blinked. He never visited. I was waiting. Well, I said, he's not coming. He was found dead. In Colombia. 2 days ago. Her face went white. Lips parted, but no words came out. They think, I added, that he stole money from a cartel. A lot of money. They don't believe he acted alone. No, she whispered. Number he wouldn't. He didn't even know. Maybe not, I said. But they believed he did. And now he's dead. Monica started to shake. Look, you should just sign the papers, I told her. There's nothing left. And you don't need anything in here. You're going to be here a long time. She slammed her cuffed fist against the table. You're leaving me with nothing! You don't need anything where you're going. Please, Mark, she cried. I can't stay here. You have to help me. I leaned back in my chair and looked her in the eye. Let me tell you a story, Monica. Maybe it'll help you sleep at night. She blinked at me, confused, silent. About 5 years ago, there was this hacker, a damn good one. So good, people started calling him Ghost, because every time he hit a system, it was like a phantom had passed through. No trace. No entry point. Just shadows. She tilted her head. What are you? This Ghost, I continued, ignoring her, had a mission. Personal. He went after the cartels. Not for money. For revenge. He stole over $30 million from one of them before they caught on. By then, he was gone. Disappeared. Mark. He knew they'd send trackers, hit squads, digital assassins, so he went dark. Built a new life. Quit hacking mostly, except for the occasional warm-up, just enough to keep the blade sharp. Monica sat frozen. This guy, Ghost. He fell in love. Married a woman who made him believe he could be someone else. A better man. A normal man. And then I smiled cold. Slow, final. But she wasn't in love with him. She had another man. And they picked Ghost as their scapegoat. They were going to steal millions and leave Ghost holding the bag. Of technology, he pretended to be completely clueless. Everyone who knew him thought he couldn't tell the difference between a router and a toaster. Even his wife believed it, especially his wife. Yes, the Ghost fell in love. Deeply. He gave her everything. Married her. Trusted her. Built a life with her. And for 3 years, he believed it was real. Until one day, by complete accident, he uncovered the truth. She had never loved him. Not even a little. She had been cheating on him the entire time. From the very beginning, with her real boyfriend, a man she'd never stopped loving, never stopped sleeping with. But that wasn't even the worst part. She hadn't just used him emotionally. She had married him with a purpose to frame him, to make him the perfect patsy in a massive embezzlement scheme. Her boyfriend supplied the digital strategy. She supplied the access. And Ghost, he was going to be their fall guy. Her eyes went wide like dinner plates as I told her this. Her skin drained of color, lips trembling. She understood now. She finally knew what I knew. So, the Ghost decided he wasn't going to let that happen. Not quietly. Not without a war. He broke into their phones, their computers, their cloud drives, their work networks. He gathered everything, every secret, every document, every message. Every dirty image and hidden transaction. Then, one by one, he rewrote the story. He removed himself from the digital trail, erased his fingerprints, and instead, he rewired the entire web of evidence to point directly at her, her accounts, her logins, her passwords. Then he twisted the knife. He planted just enough doubt in her boyfriend's mind to make him think she had turned on him. That she was cheating on him too, playing him for a fool, using him just like she'd used the Ghost. And then he forced the boyfriend to testify against her. In court, on record, she watched the man she loved put the final nail in her coffin while he stared back, believing she'd betrayed him first. It was cold. It was brutal. It was perfect. They both ended up heartbroken. Both believed they had been used, and all of it mirrored exactly how Ghost had once felt betrayed by someone he loved with his whole heart. Monica finally exhaled. Her eyes were glassy now, her jaw clenched. I leaned in. But the story doesn't end there, I said softly. After he dealt with the wife, Ghost turned his attention to the boyfriend. Because remember, there was still a cartel out there. Still angry. Still looking. Still hunting. And Ghost? I smiled. He gave them a target. He used the boyfriend's computer to hack into the cartel's network. Pulled off another heist. Left just enough evidence, just a sliver of a trail for the cartel to find it. Find him. Only it wasn't him. It was the boyfriend. The cartel followed the trail. They found the computer, the logs, the IP, and they took him. Authorities believe he was tortured for over a month before he finally died. Brutally. Without ever giving them what they wanted, because he didn't have what they wanted. He didn't even know what the hell they were talking about. I leaned back in my chair. Of course, I said with a shrug. None of that's provable. It's probably not even true. Just a little fiction. But maybe that story helps you cope. Monica's eyes were wide. Shock and horror twisted across her face. I do believe, I said. You didn't do everything they say. But don't confuse that with innocence. You're not innocent, Monica. Not even close. I slid the divorce papers across the table. Just sign them. She didn't move. Think about what happens if someone finds out you were snitching, I said quietly. Even if you weren't. All it takes is one guard who thinks you were. One inmate who hears the wrong thing. Her cheeks turned from white to a boiling, furious red. You fucking bastard, she screamed, lunging across the table at me. The cuffs yanked her arms short, just as they were designed to do. She couldn't reach me. The guard stormed in, grabbing her as she thrashed and shouted. I stood, adjusted my jacket, and walked out without another word. Outside, I climbed into a disposable rental car and drove to a nearby mall. I parked, took one last breath as Mark. Then I left him behind. Walked across the lot, toward another vehicle waiting for me. My real car, my real name, my new life.